The Harmattan wind whistled through the mud walls of our small room, where Grandma Folake lay dying. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, and her weathered hands clutched the edge of the thin blanket covering her frail body. The oil lamp flickered in the corner, casting dancing shadows on the wall.
"Aduni,"
she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind.
"Come closer, my child."
I moved my wooden stool closer to the bed. I had been keeping vigil for 3 days now, watching as life slowly ebbed from the woman who had raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 7. The thought of losing her felt like losing my anchor to the world. "Yes, Grandma, I'm here." Her eyes, cloudy with age and illness, fixed on my face.
"There is something I must tell you before I join your grandfather in the land of the ancestors. A story that has been locked in my heart for 60 years.
I nodded, though I wondered why she wanted to tell stories now, when every breath seemed to cause her pain. But I had learned long ago never to question Grandma Folake's wishes.
"Get your phone,"
she said.
"Record this story. It must not die with me."
With trembling hands, I pulled out my old smartphone and pressed the record button. The red dot appeared on the screen, and I placed the phone on the small table beside the bed. Grandma closed her eyes and was quiet for so long that I thought she'd fallen asleep. But then she spoke, her voice growing stronger, as if the telling itself was giving her life.
"Listen carefully, Aduni. This is the story of a woman with 2 shadows. This happened in 1963 in the village of Ijaiye. There lived a young woman of 21 who had just returned from Lagos, where she had learned to sew. She was beautiful, with skin like polished ebony and eyes that men said could make the moon jealous. She came back to the village with big dreams. She wanted to start a tailoring business and make beautiful clothes for the women of Ijaiye. But first, she needed to help her mother in the market. Her mother sold pepper and tomatoes, and with her daughter back home, she thought business would be better. From the very first day the young woman started helping in the market, strange things began to happen. People would come to their stall and say they had seen her fetching water at the stream while she was clearly standing there selling pepper. Others said they saw her washing clothes by the river while she was bargaining with customers. At first, everyone thought they were mistaken. You know how people in villages like to gossip. But then it happened more and more. Mama Kemi would swear she saw the young woman buying palm oil from Babatunde's shop while she was right there in front of her, weighing tomatoes. The young woman began to pay attention. Every time someone claimed to see her somewhere else, she would ask others who were with her to confirm where she was. They always supported her story. She was where she said she was. But the other sightings, they were real too. One day, her friend Bukola came running to the market, breathless and frightened. She said she had been walking to the stream when she saw the young woman coming from the opposite direction, carrying a clay pot full of water. She called out to her, but the woman looked right through her as if she wasn't there. Bukola said her eyes were empty, like looking into a deep well. Bukola was confused because she knew the young woman was supposed to be at the market, so she ran all the way there and found her selling pepper, just as expected. She was so scared she couldn't speak properly for the rest of the day. The young woman decided to test it herself. One morning, she told her mother she was going to visit her aunt in the next village. Instead, she hid behind the church and watched their market stall. From her hiding place, she could see her mother serving customers alone. But then she heard voices, familiar voices, and she recognized some of their regular customers talking about buying pepper. She crept closer and saw herself, standing at their stall, measuring pepper into small bags, chatting with customers as if nothing was wrong. But it wasn't her. I mean, it looked exactly like her, dressed in the same clothes she had worn the day before. But something was different about the way this other version moved. Her gestures were sharper, more aggressive. The young woman ran. She ran all the way to her aunt's house and stayed there for 3 days. When she returned, she asked her mother where she had been. Her mother said she had been at the market every day, helping with customers, but she seemed different, quieter, more serious. The young woman realized then that she had 2 shadows. One was her, the real her. The other was something else, something that looked like her and could do the things she could do, but lived its own life when she wasn't watching. She went to see Baba Ifakorede, the oldest man in their village. He was a babalawo, a priest of the old religion, and people said he could see things that others could not. When she told him her story, he didn't seem surprised. Baba Ifakorede told her that some people are born with double souls. Most of the time, the 2 souls live in harmony, sharing one body, taking turns without the person even knowing. But sometimes, especially when a person is under great stress or experiencing strong emotions, the souls can separate. The young woman was torn inside. Part of her wanted to stay in the village, to be a good daughter and help her family. But another part of her wanted to go back to Lagos, to chase her dreams of becoming a successful businesswoman. The conflict was tearing her apart inside, and it seems it literally tore her soul in 2. Baba Ifakorede warned her that having 2 souls in separate bodies was dangerous. He said if the situation continued, both souls would grow weaker, and eventually, both would die. He told her she needed to find a way to bring them back together. The only way, he said, was to make a choice. She had to decide which life she wanted to live and commit to it completely. The other soul would then fade away and rejoin with the chosen one. But before she could make that choice, something happened that changed everything. She fell in love. His name was Ademola, and he was the most handsome man in 3 villages. He had come to Ijaye to work as a teacher in the new primary school. Every unmarried woman in the village was trying to catch his attention, but for some reason, he chose her. They began courtship, and within 3 months, he asked her father for her hand in marriage. She was so happy. She thought all her problems were solved. She would marry Ademola, settle down in the village, and her 2 souls would naturally come back together. But she was wrong. The wedding preparations began, and that's when the real trouble started. One evening, Ademola came to their house looking confused and upset. He said he had seen her at the river, washing clothes, but when he called out to her, she had ignored him. He came closer and tried to touch her shoulder, but she pushed him away and told him to leave her alone. He said her voice was cold and harsh, nothing like the gentle way she usually spoke to him. The other shadow. But she hadn't been at the river. She had been at home, helping her mother prepare dinner. When she told Ademola this, he looked at her strangely and said he was sure it was her he had seen. They argued, and he left, angry. The next day, Mama Sidikat came to their house with disturbing news. She said she had seen the lady in the early morning, walking toward the forest with a bundle under her arm. She quickly knew that Mama Sidikat is talking about her shadow. Mama Sidikat said she called out to her, but she didn't respond. Mama Sidikat followed at a distance and saw her bury something under a large baobab tree. The young woman had never been to the forest, but when Mama Sidikat led a group of village women to the baobab tree, they found a bundle buried there. Inside were some of Ademola's clothes and a lock of his hair. Someone had performed a love spell using Ademola's belongings, but it wasn't the young woman. It was her other shadow, and she was trying to ensure that Ademola would love her instead. The other shadow was jealous, more than jealous. She was becoming her own person, with her own desires and plans, and she wanted Ademola for herself. The village began to turn against the young woman. People whispered that she was a witch, that she was using dark magic to enchant Ademola. Some of the older women said they had always suspected there was something unnatural about her, being seen in two places at once. She went back to Baba Ifakorede. She was desperate. She told him about the buried bundle and begged him to help her. He listened carefully, then shook his head sadly. He said the situation had become much more serious than he had expected. He told her that her other soul had not just separated, it had become corrupted. It was no longer content to share her life. It wanted to take over completely, to be the only version of her in existence. Baba Ifakorede explained that when souls separate under extreme emotional stress, sometimes one soul absorbs all the negative emotions: anger, jealousy, selfishness. The other soul is left with the positive emotions: love, kindness, compassion. But this makes both souls incomplete and unstable. He said there was only one way to stop her corrupted soul from taking over completely. She had to confront her directly and find a way to reintegrate both souls. But he warned her that if she failed, both souls would be destroyed and she would die. The corrupted soul was becoming bolder. People in the village reported seeing her, or the other version, doing increasingly strange things. She was seen talking to herself in the market, laughing at nothing, staring at people with hostile eyes. Worse, Ademola was becoming frightened. He said sometimes when they were together, her personality would change suddenly. She would become cold and calculating, asking him probing questions about his family's wealth and his plans for the future. Then, moments later, she would be warm and loving again, with no memory of what she had just said. The two souls were fighting for control of one body, and the corrupted soul was winning. Baba Ifakorede told her she had to act quickly before the other shadow gained enough strength to banish her permanently. She decided to confront her other self on the night before her wedding. Baba Ifakorede had given her a special charm, a small mirror wrapped in red cloth. He said if she could get her corrupted soul to look into the mirror while she was holding it, both souls would be pulled back together. She didn't have to find the other shadow. On the night before her wedding, she was sitting alone in her room, too nervous to sleep, when she heard someone walking outside. She looked through the window and saw herself. The other version was standing in the moonlight, staring at her window with a smile that made her blood run cold. She took the mirror and went outside to face her. When the shadow saw her, her smile grew wider. "Hello, sister," she said. Her voice was exactly the same, but there was something cruel in it. The shadow wanted her to give up. She said she was the stronger one, the one who could give Ademola everything he needed. She said the real woman was too weak, too conflicted, too afraid to be a proper wife. She offered to take over completely. She would marry Ademola, and the real woman could fade away peacefully. The young woman told her that she would never give up her life, her love, or her future. That's when the shadow attacked her. It was like fighting with her own reflection, but a reflection that could hurt her. Every move she made, the shadow knew before she made it, because they shared the same knowledge, the same memories. But the shadow was stronger because she carried all the anger and hatred that the real woman had been suppressing. The shadow tried to strangle her with her bare hands. As they fought, the young woman realized that Baba Ifakorede had been wrong about one thing. The corrupted soul wasn't just trying to take over her body. She was trying to kill her so she could live her life without any interference. But the young woman found strength by remembering what she was fighting for. As the shadow pressed her hands around her throat, she thought about Ademola, about her family, about all the good things in her life that the shadow wanted to steal from her. She found strength she didn't know she had. She managed to break free and pull out the mirror. But when she tried to get the shadow to look into it, the other version knocked it from her hands. The mirror shattered on the ground, and she thought all was lost. But something else happened. When the mirror broke, each piece reflected a different part of them. She saw herself in one piece, frightened but determined. In another piece, she saw the shadow, beautiful but twisted with rage. And in a third piece, she saw something else. She saw what they could be together, not two separate souls fighting for control, but one complete person with all the complexity that makes us human. She saw a woman who could be both gentle and strong, both loving and ambitious, both traditional and modern. She picked up the largest piece of the broken mirror and held it toward the shadow. "Look," she said. "Look at what we're destroying." At first, the shadow refused, but curiosity got the better of her. When she looked into the mirror fragment, something amazing happened. The shadow began to cry. For the first time since their separation, there was real emotion in her eyes, not anger or jealousy, but sadness. She said, "I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to be chosen." And the young woman realized that the corrupted soul wasn't evil. She was just afraid. Afraid of being abandoned. Afraid of not being good enough. Afraid of being forgotten. The young woman told the shadow that she was loved, that she was part of her and always would be. She said they didn't have to fight each other. They could be stronger together than apart. She extended her hand to the shadow, and after a long moment, the shadow took it. The moment their hands touched, the young woman felt a rushing sensation, like water filling an empty gourd. The shadow dissolved into light and flowed back into her. She felt complete for the first time in months. All the conflicting emotions, all the torn feelings about her future, they were still there, but they were balanced now. She was whole. The next day, she married Ademola. She was no longer torn between staying in the village and pursuing her dreams in the city. She realized she could do both. She married the man she loved and started her tailoring business right there in Ijaye. She made beautiful clothes for women throughout the region, and eventually, she saved enough money to open a shop in Lagos too. The two souls came back together successfully, but the experience changed her forever. She learned that the parts of ourselves we try to suppress or deny don't just disappear, they find ways to manifest. The key is not to fight them, but to understand them and integrate them into who we are. The woman lived a long and happy life, keeping the secret of her two shadows locked in her heart. She raised children, built a successful business, and became a respected elder in her community. But she never forgot the lesson she learned that night before her wedding, that wholeness comes not from choosing one side of ourselves, but from embracing all aspects of who we are.
Grandma's voice faded to a whisper, and I could see that the effort of telling the story was exhausting her. Her breathing was becoming more and more labored. "That's an incredible story, Grandma," I said softly. "But why are you telling me this now?" She opened her eyes and looked at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable.
"Because there's something else you need to know, Aduni. Something I've never told anyone in 60 years.
"What is it?" She gestured for me to come closer. When I leaned down, she whispered in my ear words that made my world shift beneath me.
That woman with two shadows. That woman who fought with her other self and learned to become whole. That woman was me."
I pulled back in shock, staring at my grandmother's face. "You, Grandma? You're talking about yourself?" She nodded weakly.
I never told anyone the truth, not even your grandfather. People in the village eventually forgot about the strange sightings, or they convinced themselves they had imagined them. But I never forgot.
My mind reeled as I processed this revelation. All these years, I had known my grandmother as a strong, successful woman who had built a thriving business while raising a family. I had never imagined she had struggled with such an extraordinary and terrifying experience. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, though part of me already suspected the answer.
Because you have the same gift, child. I've seen the signs. Sometimes you seem to be in two places at once. Your friends mentioned seeing you when you were somewhere else. You have the same torn feeling I had. Part of you wants to stay here with family. Part of you wants to go to America for your master's degree.
A chill ran through my entire body. It was true. Several times in the past months, people had mentioned seeing me places I hadn't been. Just last week, my friend Kemi had sworn she saw me at the university library while I was at home helping my aunt with cooking. 2 weeks before that, my neighbor insisted she had seen me at the bus stop early in the morning, but I had been asleep until noon. I had dismissed these incidents as cases of mistaken identity, but now...
If it happens to you,
Grandma whispered, her voice barely audible now.
remember my story. Don't fight with yourself. Learn to embrace all parts of who you are. The answer is not to choose one side or the other, but to find a way to be whole.
With those words, Grandma Folek took her last breath. Her hand, which had been gripping mine, relaxed and fell to the bed. I sat in the sudden silence, staring at her peaceful face. The lamp continued to flicker, casting dancing shadows on the wall, but now there was only one shadow, mine. I looked down at my phone, still recording. The red dot was still there, capturing the silence that followed her passing. With trembling fingers, I stopped the recording. As I sat with my grandmother's body, waiting for dawn when I would call the other family members, I thought about the story I had just heard. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as the rambling of a dying old woman, influenced by pain medication and approaching death. But deep in my heart, I knew it was true. I had felt the pull myself, the feeling of being divided, of wanting contradictory things, of sometimes feeling like I was observing my own life from the outside. And there had been those incidents that I could no longer ignore. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, I made a decision. I would heed my grandmother's advice. Instead of trying to suppress the parts of myself that seemed contradictory, my ambition and my loyalty to family, my desire for adventure and my need for security, my modern education and my connection to traditional ways, I would find a way to honor all aspects of who I was. I looked down at my grandmother's face one last time. Even in death, she looked peaceful, as if she had finally laid down a burden she had carried for 60 years. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered. "I understand now, and I promise I will learn to be whole." Outside, the village was beginning to wake up. Soon there would be mourning and funeral preparations, and all the rituals that accompany death. But for now, in the quiet morning light, I sat with my grandmother's story and my own future, no longer afraid of the complexity of being human. I had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the things that seem to divide us are actually the things that make us complete. The woman with two shadows had become the woman with one whole self, and now it was my turn to learn the same lesson. The recording on my phone held my grandmother's final gift, not just a story, but a map for navigating the complicated journey of becoming fully, authentically human. As I prepared to face the day ahead, I felt my grandmother's presence like a warm embrace, reminding me that every shadow, no matter how dark or frightening, was still a part of the light.